Namaste and welcome to Module 9. So, by now, you've had a chance to put into practice your spiritual yes and your spiritual no. And you've had the opportunity to practice with different pieces of paper, different words, things that you know are facts. And as you remember from the last module, you also got a feel for certain words which helped you know what maybe feels like so you could get more clear. So now that you have dove into your unique expression in terms of your spiritual self, let's talk about the ego for a moment. So we all have a very sophisticated self. As you have learned, many of us come into this world viewing it a certain way with certain characteristics and traits. And therefore, it can get a little bit confusing sometimes when the ego gets smart. Now, some of us have a very sophisticated ego, a very high intellect. And so, this is for you today if this is you. If you know that your ego is going to, at some point, and it might not have happened yet, but you're going to want to go back and listen to this if and when it does, where it starts to get really smart. And if it starts to get smart and it starts to get sophisticated, there are a few things that you can do to reset. It's going to be important, remember, that you continue to bring the ego along. Without the ego, we would not be having the human experience. And without the ego, we would not have detail, we would not have logic, and we would not be able to have a certain understanding, which then gives us the words and the comprehension to know why it is we're here and what it is that occurred. So take a nice deep breath for me if you would. And just recognize and remember that we ran the spiritual yes and the spiritual no through the three centers of intelligence. And one of those centers of intelligence is the head brain. It is where a lot of the personality and the need to get it right and the need to make sure that we stay in control resides. And we also have the heart. And the heart, as you remember, can become emotionally flooded and it can be full of different feelings that can sometimes get in the way. And so when we go into meditation, rather than put the brakes on, remember, we want to be able to accelerate, but not too quickly. We want to do it in a way where we feel safe. And so if your ego at some point, or perhaps it has already, started to pick up on the spiritual yes and the spiritual no, to the point where as you're starting to go really quickly through the head, the heart, and the gut, you're going to get so good at it that you'll be able to do it in your sleep, the more that you do the perfect practice behind it. And then sometimes your ego will jump in and it will feel, or you'll know, or you'll think you know anyway, or it will see or hear, sound, or seem like your intuition. And you'll recognize, wait a minute, this is not truth. Oh no, I'm all turned around. And then we start to question. And remember what happens when we question? Now the ego wins because the ego is now back in the driver's seat and it's no longer needing to kind of surrender anymore. If and when this occurs, I want you to have some tools. So if this has not occurred for you, then I recommend that you skip this module and come back to it at a later date. Okay, so your ego is sophisticated, your ego has gotten smart, and your ego has begun to mimic your spiritual yes and your spiritual no. So the point of today in terms of an experiential journey is to move you into a place of resetting and realigning so that your spiritual yes and your spiritual no are nice and clear again. It's like we're clearing out the cobwebs, we're doing a nice spring or fall cleaning. It's that kind of thing where sometimes we use the full moon to clear our crystals. We're going to use a nice reset and a nice renewal so that you can reset your spiritual yes and your spiritual no. First of all, just recognize and know that when your curious self, your ego self, gets in the way, it can get carried away to the point where it wants to go into fight or flight mode. And so then it starts to hang on to fear. And if we start to doubt and we start to question ourselves, we can totally spin out of control. So we want to be able to grab this early as soon as possible so that we can reset again. See, if we try to reset it, and we go back to asking ourselves the questions that we already know, which is the logical first step. If that's not working, then we need to go around it or through it. And what is a person to do? So this is how we do it. First of all, I'd like you to take a moment and close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, I want you to ask yourself, when it really worked, what was it that worked? Am I receiving more from a place of feeling, more from a place of knowing, more from a place of seeing, more from a place of hearing? And for some of you, it's going to be a combination. And if that's the case for you, then just notice, how am I sensing? How am I receiving? And this is why self-awareness and self-trust was so key. Now we're moving into full self-acceptance. And as we start to move into self-acceptance, the ego's feeling this change. It's feeling this transformation. It's feeling another invitation. And it can start to feel a little threatened at this point. So it's important that you reassure yourself that everything is going to be okay. And you move back into your place of truth. And you remember what worked. And you remember what it is that allowed you to feel confident and secure again. For some of you, you might need to go back and look at whatever experiences you had, whether it's through memory or if you journaled about it, or maybe just to think back to what kind of experiences did I have. So take a moment now and just sit with some of the experiences that you've had that started to show you that you are aligning with your truth, that started to give you your own personal proof around trusting your intuition. Notice, what did that look like? What did that sound like? What did that feel like? Overall, what was your knowing about that experience? I'd like for you to imagine that you have some type of a control panel, something with maybe a dial, or maybe it's some type of gadget. Just allow yourself to be able to control it initially with your breath. Allow it to be familiar. Maybe it's a stereo, or maybe it's some type of a control slide, or maybe it's like a remote control. And I'd like for you to really use your breath now and pay attention to where the biggest indicator on that control panel seems to be. Whatever it is, allow it to come into your mind and just notice, are there colors? Is there bars perhaps? Are there lights that move? Is it a sound? Give it permission to fluctuate and become aware of the steadiness of it, the variation of it, and how it is that you can use your breath to control it. We're going to begin with the first name. Show me a solid sign for yes that my first name is, and as you speak your own name, I'd like for you to allow that no to expand or widen or brighten to the extreme. Take something that you know is a yes answer and reply, no, no. In other words, use your control panel so that it's at maximum capacity. No, no, no. And just turn it up a little more and a little more until you blow right through it. Now we're going to do this again so that you can get a feel and a knowing for it. Clear. Take a nice deep breath. Notice your control panel once again. Show me a solid sign for yes that my birth date is. Now, as you think your birthday, intentionally resist it with a no. And now allow it to expand to the extreme. Show me a solid sign for yes that my birth date is. And now a little more. Keep expanding it, keep moving it until you blow right through it. This is how you reset your spiritual yes. So I know that this is going to be very helpful for those of you who have felt a little stuck. And you're going to want to use this tool only at times where it's absolutely necessary. Most times you're going to be able to simply relax, move into meditation, and begin to ask yourself some of these basic questions. Instead of going into the maybes, you're going into the questions that you absolutely know the truth for. But now that you've learned your spiritual yes, your spiritual no, and you've also had some tools around how it is that you can reset to realign yourself, between now and the next module, which is where you're going to meet your main spirit guide, I would like for you to do nothing, just simply rest. Go have some fun. You've been working hard. It's time to clear your mind. We want to get into feminine energies. So go and court yourself, have a date with yourself, go do something fun with friends and or family. Really take some time to clear your head and to move into a place that feels special to you, that feels fun to you, where we're really in the energies of flow and oneness, so that when you're in the next module and you meet your spirit guide, you're in a place of renewal and relaxation. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.